If we want to talk about the history of the development of the violin, there are two people who have made outstanding contributions to the development of violin skills. One is Paganini, and the other is the hero Heifetz, who was born in Lithuania at the beginning of the last century. The requirements and level of performance on the violin have raised our expectations for the entire live performance of the violin by an order of magnitude. Because before the appearance of Heifetz, those performers performed live performances. Technically speaking, they disclosed a lot, but because of the appearance of Heifetz, he brought the violin skills, especially the completeness of live performance, to a very high level. Compared with other musicians, what are the advantages of Heifetz's performance? First of all, let's start with his intonation. Anyone who has ever played a piano must know the intonation of a stringed instrument. It's not like the intonation of a fixed-pitch instrument such as a piano. The position of all the notes of the string music depends on the player's keen sense of hearing and strong muscle memory ability to find out by himself. So the pitch is different even among violinists who are also at the same level. So Heifetz's pitch is, in the eyes of professional performers, it is also recognized as the highest level. Second, Heifetz has a very outstanding soft string technique, and his flexible string changes are very rich. Generally speaking, they are fast and powerful with a strong sense of power and excitement. The effect produced by the soft string makes the music he plays full of vivid vitality. When the soft string is combined with the wonderful control, after the combination of his skills, he finally achieved a prominent symbol of Hay's playing style.
In addition, the running speed of Heifetz's finger is extremely fast, which is directly related to his innate good function and hard training in single and double scales. But what is more valuable is that no matter how fast or difficult it is, he can not only play all the phrases extremely cleanly and clearly, but also maintain extremely precise pitch. In this regard, he can be said to be the most outstanding violinist in ancient and modern times.
Then there is his divine right hand, his control over the rhythm, and his extremely scientific power to distribute movement functions to achieve an excellent state of relaxation, so that he is playing fast jumping bows, short bows, jumping bows, and throwing bows, etc. When it comes to difficult exercise skills, the quality and speed of his completion can be as much as twice that of other performers. Let's enjoy the wonderful moments of Heifetz. Heifetz's real name is Jascha Heifetz. He was born in 1901 in Varna, Lithuania, is the principal violinist of the Varna Symphony Orchestra, so he has a keen response to music from infancy.
At the age of 3, his father gave him a quarter-sized violin, and he could play it within a week. He started taking lessons with his father, but soon he surpassed his father and entered Varna. The Royal Academy of Music began performing before he was 5 years old in the halls of the packed music school.
A year later, he played Montaton's Violin Concerto for more than 1,000 audiences.
When Heifetz was 7 years old, he went to St. Petersburg to play to Orr. This Orr was Heifetz's future teacher and one of the people who had the greatest influence on his piano learning career. Who was Mr. Orr? Who is Joachim, a student of Joachim? He is the leading figure of the German violin school in the 19th century. So Orr should be regarded as one of the best violin teachers in the 20th century. He is very good at cultivating and discovering talented students. Many of the most famous young listeners active on the stage in the 20th century are his students, such as the violinist Campari, Stair and Ellman, including Heifetz and Milstein, etc., but he...
Auer was not immediately accepted as a student, as everyone believed, and he had to wait until he was 9 years old to enter Auer's violin class. Even so, he was still the youngest student to enter the St. Petersburg Conservatory. Heifetz believes that in this no teacher in the world can match him, because Auer teaches every student differently.
It is what we call the elite teacher who teaches Heifetz as Auer's private student and student of the Conservatory of Music. He has studied from Auer for about 6 years, except for teaching him to play sonatas and concertos. Auer has never taught any of his etudes or technical works. We can also infer from this point that Mr. Auer must have thought that Heifetz's technique was already very good. When the young Heifetz was a student at the conservatory, he gave concerts in St. Petersburg and other cities in Russia. At one concert in Odessa, 25,000 people stood up to pay homage to him. How popular Heifetz was at that time can definitely be regarded as traffic responsibility. And he's not only famous in Germany, but reports of him have spread all over Europe. He was only 11 years old when he premiered Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in Berlin. When he played Bruch's Violin Concerto in G minor in Leipzig in 1913, it is said that Heifetz was the only violinist who played solo with this orchestra at such a young age, except for Joachim, because at this concert, Kreisler just wrote the Prelude and Allegro Chinese Drum Love Joy.
This is one of the most famous violinists in the 20th world. When I listened to his performance, I sighed that you and I should take out the violin and smash it on our knees. International concert performances.
It was even more difficult to stage a show when there were rumors that the Russian Revolution was about to break out, so Heifetz's father decided to risk the war years across the Pacific and take his son to the United States for the first time. The first show in the United States was in 1917, October 27 at Carnegie Hall in New York.
Heifetz was 16 at the time, with slender stature, blue eyes, and neatly curled hair. He stunned audiences, including all the highest order strings in the city, not only with his brilliant playing, but with his calm typhoon. Performer his repertoire includes Wieniawski's Concerto in D minor. Paganini's 24 Caprices.
The audience for this concert was members of the Musicians Association of New York, including some of the most outstanding musicians in the world. They unanimously decided to prepare a banquet dedicated to Heifetz on Saturday, December 29, 1917. All important figures were present. It is precisely because of this banquet that Heifetz was placed on the decoration of the King of Violinists.
As Heifetz became more and more famous, his performance income also increased sharply. In December 1919, his income per concert in the United States was as high as $250, which was the highest remuneration paid to classical music performers at that time. Compare the 11th of the same year, monthly Kreisler's performance income is only $2.00, and is already considered the highest. On May 5, 1920, Heifetz performed his first performance in the UK at the Queen's Hall in London. People were scrambling to sign Heifetz to gigs, and the shows were sold out, and he was equally successful all over the world, and his fame spread across continents, and Heifetz became very busy doing about 200 shows a year. Almost every concert he held was warmly welcomed by the people.
We praise him for his impeccable playing, his excellent left-hand technique, his wonderful movement, his syntax, and his musicality. There are no words that can properly express his true genius. After talking about Heifetz's life experience, let's talk about it later. Consider his character and conduct. Heifetz has a great sense of humor. He sometimes mischievously imitates other people's actions at the party and is very talkative. He often tells people various jokes about himself. If you think that Heifetz can only play the piano, it is a big mistake. Heifetz has a very wide range of hobbies. When he was young, he was a photographer who liked to shoot all kinds of things. He was an excellent tennis player and played table tennis very well. He loved collecting good books. Occasionally, he also accompanying special guests on tours of their extensive library. Heifetz not only plays the violin very well, he is also a very famous teacher. Heifetz has trained many very accomplished students, among which the first two students he accepted were Friedman and A. Moyer. But because Heifetz has very strict requirements on students, no students come to study. So when he travels around the world, he interviews some students according to his first student, Friedman. When Heifetz heard Friedman play and put him in an hour-and-a-half interview, Friedman, who was only 18 years old at the time, was very nervous, but to his surprise, the teacher allowed him to play for more than 2 hours.
After the interview, Heifetz agreed to accept Friedman as his apprentice, so Friedman became Heifetz's first student recruited by Shengshi, but it was because of such a picky and strict selection mechanism that Heifetz chose students in the way. It must be the emphasis on intelligence rather than weight that makes many of his students have important achievements. For example, one of his important students, Feder.
He is the first American winner of the Moscow Tchaikovsky International Competition since Kleiben. In a classroom at the University of Southern California, 4 of Heifetz's students, including Feder, attend classes twice a week. 7 hours of time, Feder commented on Heifetz. Studying with a teacher like Heifetz for 1 year is like studying for 10 years to learn so much. Feder concludes that Heifetz is not what we usually think of as a teacher. He can tell you a lot about his experience of performing on the concert stage, which is very, very rare. As a teacher, there is another thing to learn from Heifetz. The most important thing is how to maintain energy so that you can release it on stage.
Heifetz must have had this ability and used it all his life, because performing in public requires a tremendous amount of mental and physical energy. An artist must be prepared for emergencies. A 20th century performer must also face for many additional difficulties in the progress, such as sudden changes in the weather, bad acoustics, and physical discomfort caused by long-distance flights.
The student Feder said that all of these should be taken into account. Under adverse conditions, we must be more than 100% prepared. Heifetz is such a teacher. He taught students how to do this, of course. No one is perfect. Heifetz's performance put aside his technical level. There are also things that the world has criticized. For example, the audience thinks that he has used a flat and rigid expression similar to the face of this lost person in his performances all his life. Therefore, the audience misunderstands him and thinks that he plays the violin as cold as ice and has no emotion. But there are also different explanations for this. All Heifetz's feelings are in the music. He doesn't let himself get lost in the various facial expressions and body movements so as not to affect the playing movements of the left and right hands. He also requires his students to always face the left hand with their heads in this position when playing. It is difficult for the body to move around, swing back to his side, who say pure playing is more satisfying than overexcited. But one thing is undeniable is Heifetz's difficult but effortless performance, which is actually not easy for violin players. Many players have to deal with tension all their lives. And how to stay slack to fight against Heifetz's pronunciation, his precision intonation, the infinite color variations produced by his movement. It's all unmatched in terms of musical expression. He has a keen sense but never becomes in terms of sentimentality. Heifetz is also unparalleled. After listening to the life of Heifetz, I believe that as an excellent violinist, his influence will continue for centuries to come. Thank you for watching. In the next issue, I will share with you about Paganini and the history behind him. Welcome to the story.